Hey, welcome to the Empowered and Free podcast. My name is Erin Kimbrell, and I'm a counselor, certified life coach, breathwork coach, and small town mom of two. I know firsthand what it feels like to live with high functioning anxiety. For most of my life, I had so much mental mess, anxiety, people pleasing, perfectionism, overthinking, constant worrying, and never feeling good enough. On my decade-long journey to feeling better, I've learned how to take back my life from high-functioning anxiety and helped others to do the same through my coaching and breathwork programs. Now I want to share everything I know with you. This podcast will help you feel empowered over your high-functioning anxiety and free to finally live the life of your dreams. Now, grab a cup of coffee, get comfy, and dive into the episode. I'm Erin Kimbrell, and this is the Empowered and Free podcast. All right. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Empowered and Free podcast. I am so excited for you guys to meet today's guest, Elizabeth. Elizabeth is a stress coach for moms, and she's the host of the Emotionally Healthy Legacy podcast. She's a mom of four and super passionate about mental health and emotional wellness in motherhood. She helps overwhelmed moms reduce the mental stress so they can respond with patience and calm towards their kids. Don't we all need that, right? She teaches proactive ways to be less stressed, to prioritize your needs without guilt, and ways to regulate your emotions when feeling triggered. All right, welcome, Elizabeth. I'm so glad that we're talking again. I think every single person who's listening has felt stressed because we're all humans, right? And we feel this every day. And I know there's a ton of listeners on here who are moms and can relate to us on that level. So I would love for you to share a little bit about your story, how you got here, and your journey.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. So, I'm Elizabeth, and I have four young kids. They're 10 and under, and three boys and a girl. So, it's a full house, lots of noise, full of energy. I'm
Yeah.
also like an introvert and highly sensitive person. I've learned that like recently about myself in the last few years. And I think that really helped me kind of shift the ways I've been doing things as a mom, to kind
Mm.
of fill up my own cup. And so I would love to share a little bit about my story. So a few years ago, I was struggling parenting my youngest boy, and a friend of mine I suggested to go to counseling. And I resisted a little bit because I'm like, well, I know how to parent. I read a ton of books and but it was all about kind of like traditional type of parenting. And when I went to counseling eventually, because I was just he was one of those kiddos like Curious George on steroids. He would get into everything. I felt like I was always on guard. Like he would drain so much out of my energy every day trying to like keep an eye on him, making sure he's safe. And when I went to therapy, I was introduced to respectful parenting or gentle parenting. I think many of us have heard that. And I think if people know kind of that what it really is, it's more like you allow your kids to express feelings, but you have kind of boundaries and limits, and you keep them safe, you keep others safe, don't let them just hit others. And there's a lot of things about like co-regulation, which is means like when they're having a meltdown, you stay calm without freaking out and just like allowing those feelings to pass in a safe way. But anyways, there was a lot of unlearning that I had to do as a parent of doing things a different way. I was raised in traditional parenting home where like you do things my way, you don't ask anything. Like if you're upset or sad, go to your room and get over it.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was like very, very different. And it was like taking so much energy out of me to, stay calm and patient with my kids when they were throwing a tantrum, and not just try to like force them to stop and raise my voice and yell at them. And I felt like I was really frustrated a lot with my kids, and I was easily triggered, annoyed by them. And then COVID hit, and like combination of all of that, then being home
Mhm.
all the time, it was just really challenging for me. I felt like every day I would just wake up and I would like dread the day with my kids, and I feel annoyed and bothered by them. And as COVID like started and everything was just kind of like uncertain, I ended up buying a course from Ali Casaza called Unburdened. And
Mhm.
that course really changed my life. Legit, in the
Yeah.
sense of like the way I did motherhood and the way I shifted things. Earlier that year, I decluttered my house, and that was helpful to kind of give me like take less energy to keep up with my house. But I still had like lots of like things in my home that didn't run so smoothly. I didn't have scheduled time to myself. I would just constantly give to my family um, without like refilling my own cup. And then when
Mm.
I would try to refill my own cup, it would be like I was just scrolling on my phone or just watch TV, nothing that was truly like restorative. And in that course, I learned a lot of things about how to truly restore my cup and prioritize myself without feeling guilty and like feeling like it's bad to take time for myself. And between what I learned in therapy and that course, I recognize that when my needs are unmet, when I am running on empty, my brain doesn't have the emotional capacity to emotionally regulate and
Mhm.
be calm and patient with my kids. And I learned that how I can kind of structure my day and prioritize my needs without guilt. And like the combination of all of that really shifted the way I was doing things. I started getting up early before my kids and having some space to myself and incorporating healthy habits that were good for my mental and emotional well-being, like journaling and affirmations and meditations and just like
Mhm.
visualizing. And all of that was so helpful. And granted, this is like in the midst of COVID. When COVID happened, all my kids are home all the time. It's cold outside, we're stuck inside.
Mhm.
But because I created like daily rituals to restore my cup, to fill myself up, to create kind of alone time, even in the middle of the day, to restore myself, I noticed that I was a lot more patient and calm with my kids. I wasn't like, yeah, I still had my hard moments, but it wasn't like every day, all day, I'm annoyed, frustrated by them and their existence and all their needs. I was just being actually the mom that I wanted my kids to remember. I was able to have moments for myself, restore myself, and then I was able to be present with my kids and like not feel like I'm pulled in all these different directions at the same time. And as I was like learning all this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to share with my friends. I kept on talking to my, sister-in-laws and my friends, and like I couldn't shut up about everything I've learned. And then I had the idea, well, what if I start a podcast and
Yeah.
just teach other women who want to listen, right? All the things that
Mhm.
I've learned and how it has benefited me. And so here we are, like a few years later, I have a coaching program. I became a stress coach for moms, and I have a podcast, and I'm just like living, the life that I thought I could never have, but now I am here. So,
Oh my gosh. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I feel like probably a reason we connected is we have so many things in common. I myself am an introvert, highly sensitive and empath. Like we are on the same
mm-hmm,
page, and motherhood can push you over the limit when you're when you're struggling with those kind of things. And like you said, just recently finding that out, how helpful that can be for you, not only in motherhood, but in life too. And for
mm-hmm.
me, how much that was playing into my anxiety. So I feel like we have that. I know we both love Allie and met through her, which is awesome too. And lastly, COVID being the time that when so many people were struggling, it sounds like you and I actually like found our groove, like we figured it out, which oh, that was a life-changing time for me. Um, and so we used that time to really dig into our tools, figure out how to support ourselves, and came out on the other end of that better, thankfully. So if anybody feels the opposite, we are here to share how that actually has benefited us. And that's a big part of what we're going to talk about today, which is the difference between stress and anxiety, how you know which one you're struggling with or when you're struggling with them. I struggle with both because again, we're human. We all feel stressed. I know Elizabeth can share in just a moment about anxiety and how she's felt that in her life. And so how do you tell the difference? How does that feel in your body? What do you do when you're struggling with each? That's what we're going to dive in today. So let's first start with your area of expertise, being stress. How would you describe what stress is if we're just focused on that?
Yeah. So stress feels, I think it feels different than
Mm-hmm.
anxiety in your body. I think they overlap oftentimes. I think if you are anxious, it's going to create a stress response
Yes.
as well, right?
Right.
But stress is more like just like your body feels tense and just like super, mm, I don't even know, like there's just so much pressure. It feels like you're
Mm-hmm.
being pulled in all these different directions at the same time. And it comes from not, I mean, there can be thoughts that definitely create the stress, right? But oftentimes it comes from outside stuff, right? It's
Right.
like all these to do things with like work and school and homework and running errands and just like not having enough support. And you're just trying to do all these things and you're pulled in different directions,
Mm-hmm.
overstimulation, too much happening at the same time. Like financial strain that causes that stress. It will also breed into anxiety, but like that
Mm-hmm.
tension and, you know, like where yes, there's not, you have that fear of future, but also like the reality of like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is what's happening. When you have tension with like your spouse or with your kids, that creates a stress response, tensions at work and relationship kind of problems. Like when you're constantly going, like that is one of the things that I think is such a big stressor for so many moms. They're overscheduled, they overcommitted, they're
Yes.
just literally doing too much,
Mm-hmm.
doing all the things, and they feel like that's what moms should be doing, like that's what a good mom does. And so constantly going. And or like when you're dealing with like a big loss, right? Like
Yes.
a family member, or like we moved this summer cross country. That was a
Mm.
big change for all of us to adjust to new place. You're driving, you can't find directions, you're lost
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, like
Yeah.
like all the things you need to do to sign your kids up for school, and like, or like you went through a divorce. That's a big one too. you
Mm-hmm.
know those are some like stressors in our lives that happen, and some of them are in our control and out of our control. Like some of them are simple ones, like when you don't have enough sleep, if you don't eat meals, that creates a stress response in your
Yes.
body. But those are things in your control. If you lost a loved one, that's out of your control, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the things that I work with my mamas are things that are completely in their control and they can do something about. And I also teach them how to like calm their brain and body when they are stressed out. Like you said, we all deal with stress. It's not
Mm-hmm.
that like this is all about like avoiding stress completely. You can't. It's life. We're all
That's right.
human. But it's like, how do you deal with it? Are you creating more of it with, putting too much on your plate? Or can you take some actions to release some of that, ask for support, and make things a little bit easier for yourself?
Yes. Oh, so many good things. So many wonderful examples. Like that feeling of pressure, that feeling of an overfull plate, of no end in sight. I can just like feel that right now. And I know what that feels like in my life because, again, times happen like that. We also moved this year. When we're recording right now, it's holiday season. And so those times of just a lot going on and that feeling of stress, that's what we want to differentiate here between the stress and anxiety. So amazing job, I feel like, explaining what that feels like in your body. If I could take over as far as the anxiety piece, for me, that's when you're more in your thoughts, right? You're more
Mm-hmm.
worried about what's coming in the future. Maybe you're even dreading it. Sometimes that's how my anxiety shows up, is like dread, like, oh, I don't want to do this because I know it's going to be harder. It's going to be a lot. Nervousness, fear, like you talked about, that fear of the future, fear of failing, fear of even being successful. Like there's a lot that we could go into there, which maybe we will in another episode, but that anxiety in your mind, the worry, that pervasive thinking that takes over, that's when we've creeped from a stressful time into an anxious time. And so A quick example, let's say you have a big presentation at work. You might feel stressed when you're like getting that information together to prepare, right? You and I just moved. We know what that feels like to think about putting all the things in my house in a box and having to move them somewhere else. Not only you moved across the country, I just moved next door, which is a funny story, but that is stressful. So when we know it's creeped into anxiety is when we're worrying or feeling nervous about that thing, right? So a stressful event can cause us to also feel anxious. So maybe you have one, maybe you have the other. I know you mentioned, for me, my anxiety was more of a lifetime experience. I've always struggled with it, even from a super young kid. But I know your experience with anxiety was a little bit different. Do you want to tell us about what that was like for you?
Yeah, so I'm not normally like an anxious person in general. I easily get overwhelmed in the sense like overstimulated and like when I'm pulled in multiple different
Mm-hmm.
directions, I think I naturally get a little bit stressed out easily because I'm highly sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
But like I've always seen anxiety as like these negative thoughts that create the worst case
Yes.
scenarios.
Yes.
That's what I see as anxiety. And I think a lot of people like they use the word anxiety when they're stressed. They use the word anxiety when they're just overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
They just literally use anxiety for everything. And I'm like thinking to myself, like, no, that's just like overwhelmed or stressed
Mm-hmm.
out. And I've had experiences when I was anxiety, I think like first early experiences as I could remember. Like I grew up in a conservative Slavic church, and as a kid, you would memorize verses and or
Mm-hmm.
poems, and you would go in front of the church, and then you would say a poem in front of
Yeah.
everybody, and it's like a big audience, and like you feel this anxiety, like, well, what if I mess up? What if I forget my lines? And then I
Mm-hmm.
get like lost. So those are kind of like anxious thoughts, right? Like
Yeah.
playing out a negative scenario, you're just scared, literally you're
Mm-hmm.
just scared, that fear, or like I have, I remember postpartum I had some anxiety, not severe, but it's like, what if I go down the stairs and I slip with my baby and my
Mm-hmm.
baby dies, like, or somebody slams the door and hits their head and like they die, or somebody drops them. So like those are actual like anxious thoughts that create
Mm-hmm.
this negative scenario that has not happened. You just played it out in your head, and then it creates like that almost like tension in your chest. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this panic, like your heart is palpitating so hard, you literally feel like there's like something bad is going to happen right now. And
Yeah.
the times I have experienced it in my life is like I there were some other scenarios in my life that I had to like literally I went on my phone and I Googled, I'm like, what is this? I feel like I can't breathe. Like I just can't even get enough air in, because I've had anxiety before, but not so severe. And then when I
Mm-hmm.
looked it up and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's an anxiety attack. I'm like, I've had only a few of those in my life. I think it's because in general, I have just kind of like, maybe like worked on my mindset my whole life. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've always been into personal growth and development and just like shifting my thoughts. And I also grew up in a safe home. I think that helped
Yes.
not to have like fear and anxiety. Like it was traditional parenting, but it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
just like, you know, my parents got along really well. And so that was safe. And so I didn't have like something that I dealt with that like on a regular basis. So, yeah, I have a sister
Yeah.
who like I feel like she's never anxious. Like
Oh,
this is a
wow.
funny story. This past the other weekend, she turned 30 and she lives in New York, and all our siblings and parents surprised her and we went to visit her. And my mom loves to do these traditions, family traditions. So when we
Mm-hmm.
were like kids in 2008, so every first Sunday of the month, we between church services, we would go home and have family Sunday. So one time a month, we all had to go home and have family Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And so she would create these things that we would have to do together. And one of them would be like to describe your siblings. And granted, we're like teens and like young kids, and we
Mm-hmm.
would write like annoying,
Yeah.
bothersome, like, with each other, like easily frustrated, crazy, like
Yeah.
all these things to describe our siblings. And one of my sisters, she's like super easygoing. She literally takes everything with a light heart. She's like, oh, it didn't work out. All
Oh,
right, we'll just
man.
move on. She was like that when she was a teenager. She's like that right now. She's like,
Mhm.
she's like, the other day, my husband called me when I was at work and he's like, when you come home, we need to talk about something. She's like, I hung up. I thought about it for a couple of minutes. What does he want to talk about? She's like, I couldn't think of anything. And I'm like, yeah, I'll just think about it later and move on. I'm like for me, I'm not super anxious, but I'd be like,
Yeah.
okay, what are some bad things that he wants to talk about, right?
Right.
What did I do?
Totally.
And she's like, and it's just some people, I think part of it is their personality.
Hmm.
Like you're just more like she lets go of things really easily. She doesn't overthink. She just like, eh. But and I think part of it is also like your life experience that, you know, contributes to anxiety and anxious thoughts.
Yes. Oh my gosh. First of all, can't relate to your sister. Can't relate.
Me neither. I'm not like that either.
Now my husband is very much like that. And so there'll be times I'll be like, tell me what you're thinking. And he's like, nothing. And I'm like, nothing. Like what? I need to do a whole episode with him because just like that would
That's
be
how
hilarious.
my sister is, because we talked about that too. She's like, I can literally think about nothing. And her husband is opposite. He's anxious and
Oh my
has all these
gosh.
like thoughts all the time.
Opposites attract for sure. So anyway, that's so funny, like how different we can all be, but man, I can't relate to that. Hey, I know you. You feel stressed with no end in sight. Everything feels like it's too much. Your anxiety is on level 10 and you can't seem to chill. Your mind goes a million miles a minute, constantly overthinking and worrying. You wish that you could just crawl in bed and take a nap for an hour, a day, or maybe a year. Friend, it's time to take a breather. Literally. Breath work is such a powerful way to turn off the mind and let go of everything you've been carrying. Say goodbye to stress, anxiety, and overwhelm in 3 minutes or less. The cool thing about breathwork is that it's scientifically proven to quiet your busy brain. It's as close to an off switch for your brain as you can get. And here's what happens when you start doing breathwork. Your mind calms down. Your worries disappear. The stress lifts off your shoulders. Your nervous system chills out and you sink into a deep relaxation. You feel like you just got out of a hot tub. And all of this happens with just 3 minutes of breath work. Not even kidding, it's mind-blowing. And the even better news is that you can try it free for 7 days. Am I crazy? Maybe. Do I want you to try breathwork and feel the difference? Absolutely. Go to heyerinkimbrell.com/breathe to check it out and read what others have had to say. Plus, I'm giving you 7 days free to try it. You can cancel at any time, no questions asked, because that's how I roll. I trust you and your judgment. Give yourself the gift of less stress and anxiety with Release, Relax, Breathe. Head to heyerinkimbrell.com/breathe to learn more and try it for free. I do want to go back to one thing you mentioned too about stress in your body and what that feels like. For me, stress and anxiety can feel very similar, and everybody has their own kind of like experience with that and what that's like for them. But the muscle tension you kind of talked about and the tightness, the heaviness on the chest, headaches, all of those things come for me with stress and with anxiety. So I just want to go back because this was so key that you said something that you talked about as far as the cause of what you're feeling, right? If that cause is an external cause, like you talked about financial stress or a tight deadline at work or a move or any of those kind of things, that stressor is, if it's external, it usually is causing stress in our life. But when it's coming from internally, like our thoughts or our response, that's typically anxiety. So if you're listening and you're kind of looking to determine which one it is, that's something that's really helpful. Is this an external stressor or is this an internal stressor, right? Are you feeling dread, fear, nervousness, and worry? Or is it just because you do have something going on that's really stressful, right? Like, again, stress is normal, anxiety is normal. But when they kind of creep into a dysfunction, when they're messing with our lives, that's when we want to look at it. So let's talk about some ways to look at it, right? I share a ton of tips and support here for anxiety, but I want to hear, what are your top tips, tools, tricks you do to help with stress? You've mentioned some here, but like, let's get into the practical. What do you like to do?
Yeah, I think that number one thing is do less in the sense of
Mm,
like have
yes.
less on your plate. And I think with moms, this is really hard. They tend to feel like they have to do all these things. And
Yeah.
I think that's why it's so important to kind of like, if you're so busy, you're going to have a hard time creating this time, but slowing down to create that time to reflect and be like, what is going in my life right now? What am I committed that's not serving me? And actually
Hmm.
creating all this chaos, right? Like that's
Yes.
craziness. Like that's what will create that stress, that chaos and craziness of doing all the things, saying you're going to do all these cookies and you're going
Hmm.
to organize this event. And then you don't have time to like literally eat and go to the bathroom because you're committed to too many things. I think
Yes.
that is like such a simple thing, but at the same time, challenging one because it requires a mindset shift
Hmm.
and looking at your life and be like, what are some of the commitments that I'm committed to that are actually draining me so much? I'm not excited about them. I don't want to do them. I feel like I have to because, somebody wants me to do them. And so looking at that and be like, what can I let go of? Like, what
Yeah.
is not serving me in this season? If you have a newborn baby and you have four other kids that have sports activities, like, and your husband works long hours, like, mama, like, this is not a season
Yeah.
for your kids to play sports. This is might be a time to take a break for a year
Hmm.
because to save your own sanity
Yeah.
and that stress level. So that I think is the biggest thing. It's like, what can I let go of? If this season is the intention to recover and to prioritize kind of recovery and my well-being, so then I can be that mom for my kids that takes them to activities. That means for this season, you let go of some of those things. And
Hmm.
some kids might be upset about it. You have the conversation, but you letting go to create that space in your life, that white space. I feel like that's the thing. We're missing white space for life
Hmm.
to happen,
Hmm.
right? If we're always busy, 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 and then your kid hurts and breaks his arm, to go to the doctor and go to the appointments now creates all these extra stressors because you were doing already too much. So
Yes.
deleting, deleting and delegating, right? Deleting
Yeah.
things in your life that are literally not serving you and draining you, and delegating some things to others, which is releasing a little bit of control to make things lighter, to make things easy. Do grocery pickup or instant cart delivery. Delegate.
Yes.
If you
That's right.
have the financial means to hire help and clean your home, delegate, right?
Yes.
If you like de- give your kids chores to do. Like it's good for them, delegate. Ask your spouse to help out a little bit with like some housework. Delegate so you're not doing all the things. So that is going to reduce a big stressor in your life, and that is completely in your control. Um, the other thing is like doing self-care. I know we talk about self-care a lot. And just in general, I think there's a
Hmm.
big movement with self-care. But like, what does it really mean? It's literally taking care of yourself,
Right.
valuing yourself enough to get enough sleep, to um to eat meals,
Hmm.
right? To drink water, to have some space for yourself in your day, to do something that fills you up and not just like escape because you're so overwhelmed and stressed out by scrolling on your phone.
Hmm.
So I think like self-care is really important. And here's the thing with self-care. When your needs are not met, when you're running on empty, even simple things as sleep deprivation and hunger, your brain perceives that as a threat. And
Hmm.
when there's that threat response, it shuts off the part of the brain that helps you regulate your emotions. So you will be more triggered when you're sleep deprived And when you're hungry, you will be more snappy with your spouse. You will be more frustrated with your kids. You're going to raise your voice. You're going to lose your patience. And then you're going to feel guilty. Oh, I'm such a bad mom for yelling at my kids all the time. No, you're
Yes.
not. You just have unmet needs.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to slow down and be like, wait, hold on. Am I hungry? I might just need to eat some food and I'll be better.
Yes. Hangry for sure. Like that's a running joke in our family, but it's not funny because it's true. It really impacts us. So I'm totally with you. These are fantastic.
Yeah. And so also like when we talk about like self-care, I think what is really important, what helped me significantly to be less triggered, to be less overstimulated, to feel less stress in my body is to proactively on a regular basis, not wait until I'm burned out, but on
Mm-hmm.
a regular basis, do practices that support my mental and emotional well-being, and they actually help anxiety as well, and those are the things that you teach as well, but like deep breathing,
Yeah.
visualizing a calm and peaceful place. Like I love doing like going on a mental vacation. Like I love it. Like
Mm.
I literally visualize myself
Yes.
going to like Bora Bora and walking into that clear water and just like literally floating with the sunshine right on my face. And I'm like breathing in peace and calm and breathing out all tension through my limbs. And it just like super calming and peaceful. Positive affirmations, right?
Mhm.
Like those are also super helpful to like bring in more positivity and calm and support in your life. And um when I'm like overwhelmed or stressed out, I think like for me, as a regular thing I do on a regular basis, so I don't get to that freak out mode,
Mhm.
is I journal. I literally journal and brain dump on a regular basis. You have to like get that stress out in a healthy way. Otherwise, it stays in and it comes out.
Mhm.
It pulls from your mental, emotional, or physical well-being. It when you suppress that stress and you don't get it out in a healthy way, it's gonna come out eventually somehow and not in a good way.
Yeah.
And so that's why like with the clients I work with, I teach them proactive ways to calm your
Mhm.
nervous system, to be more calm and grounded, but also teach you strategies to release that stress so you don't suppress it in your body in a way that works for you, because everybody's a little different.
Yeah. Tell me more about that. That's a great segue. Tell us what it would look like to work with you. When you work with a stress coach, how do you help people? What do sessions look like? And we want to hear it all.
Yeah, so I have a pre-recorded coaching program where you get to watch the lessons and trainings throughout the week. And then we meet one-on-one via Zoom and then we talk about those things. So
Mhm.
we'll talk about things in your life that are draining you and that you maybe need to let go of. And sometimes it's those mindset blocks that are holding you back, right? To like
Yes.
letting you feel so guilty, and we need to process that and release it. We talk about what kind of mom you do want to be for your family, like
Mhm.
what kind of memories you want to create, and creating a life that supports that. How to ask for help without feeling guilty. What do you do with those guilty thoughts that creep in? What do you do when you lose your cool with your family? Right?
Mhm.
Like all that mom guilt. How do you not go down that rabbit hole? How do you pull yourself out of it? And then a lot of strategies, how to calm your nervous system, like,
Yeah.
so there is more peace and calm to begin with. How to
Mhm.
create that time for yourself and teach your kids to respect that time and not feel bad for it. And how to like process and release that stress, all these practices that help you like let go of that stress, and modeling for your kids of some a mom who's able to be in control of her own emotions and not just project and freak out and yell at everyone else. So if you ever struggled with like mom rage and constantly yelling at your family, it's not because you're a bad mom, it's because you're struggling. There's
Yeah.
something going on deeper, and that's the kind of work we do, figuring out the root of what's going on.
Mhm.
So then we can like actually take action on it and just not just put a band-aid over it. And like what is not working? What do we need to shift and let go of so you can create more peace and calm in your home and it's sustainable and your family feels better? Because when you're better as a mom, right? Like you know yourself, right? When you're in a good mood, when things are feeling good, even if like your kids are cranky, like you're able to handle things so much better and you can
Yeah.
share some of that positive energy. But when you're struggling, when you're in a bad mood, want it or not, it seeps into the rest of the family
That's
too.
right.
And
Yes.
so I think that's what's so important for mamas to kind of like, work on themselves. And it requires that deep inner work. Sometimes it's uncomfortable things that we have to talk about, like, and let go of some things that are not serving us. But yeah, those are the kind of things I work with my mama. So if you want more peace and calm in your home and things feel super chaotic and tense right now, and you're ready to like be done with it, I'm the one that you come to and we work to get you to a place where you want to be.
Yes, it is that was beautiful because it is so evident to me that you are speaking from a place of experience, that you truly live your life this way, that this is not fluff, that this is real, that you've done all those things that you're teaching about. I can tell that from you. I can tell that from what I see online that you share. It's just every mom truly does need this. So I'm so glad that you're doing this work.
Thank you. Thank you. And that is one of my core values is authenticity. And I don't teach my mamas things that I don't implement. And it's like, I live this every single day. I have 4 young kids. I have to implement what I teach. Otherwise I would feel crazy and like losing my cool all the time.
For sure.
And so yes, I practice what I preach as much as I can. We sure all have hard days here and there, but that's not my daily norm. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Well, last thing, what is one nugget of wisdom? What do you want listeners to remember or take away from this today?
Yeah. No one benefits when you're running on empty, and no one suffers when your needs are met.
Yeah. Oh, that was so good. I love that. That was just beautifully put. And that could go for everyone. I know that you speak to moms and that's your area of expertise, but if you're not a mom and you've been listening, we all have a ripple effect to those around us, right? And so that was just so beautiful. I feel like you need to put that into a beautiful infographic so we can all share that offline everywhere. Well, speaking of sharing, how can listeners connect with you? Where can they find you? Let us know.
Yeah, so I have a podcast called Emotionally Healthy Legacy. You can find me there. I also hang out mostly on Instagram under the same handle, Emotionally Healthy Legacy. And I did create a page for your listeners where you can download 5 strategies to reduce overwhelm right now. And then a recording of positive affirmations that you can listen to after you lost your cool with your family and you feel so guilty, right? That mom guilt, that like, oh, I'm the worst mom ever. But positive affirmations to redirect your mindset and thoughts to like supporting yourself. Like, I'm struggling. I had a hard day and I did my best. So you don't go down the rabbit hole of like severe mom guilt.
Thank you so much for doing that. That was so kind. I'm sure we'll appreciate that. And it's been amazing catching up with you, talking again today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.
Hey, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. You don't know how much it means to me. If you'd like more behind the scenes content, inspiration, and daily reminders that encourage and uplift you, follow me on Instagram at heyerinkimbrell and send me a DM to say hey. If any of the episodes have been super helpful for you, please consider leaving me a review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen. It helps me so incredibly much, and it allows the podcast to be seen by other people who need it. If you want to learn more from me, head to heyerinkimbrell.com. That's where you'll find all my free resources, read the podcast show notes, and learn more information about my online coaching and breathwork programs that help you create the life you want.
If you want to keep the conversation going from today's episode, join us in our exclusive podcast Facebook community, Empowered and Free, Help for High Functioning Anxiety. I'm here for you, and I'm always cheering you on. I'll see you next time. I'm Erin Kimbrell, and this is the Empowered and Free podcast.